Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of America.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is year 0. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with James Jenneman of the Blackbird podcast. James and I decided to take a deep dive into responsibility. It's intense. we get into it a lot. We talk about personal things, a lot of personal experiences for both of us, and our probably things that we normally wouldn't talk about. But we both enjoyed this conversation, I feel, and I think this is a conversation that a lot of people are going to get a lot of things out of that you can actually put to use in your own life and actually learn from. So before we get into the podcast, RyanBunting.com for all of your graphic design needs. Go to RyanBunting.com. Ryan Bunting is a great libertarian and a half-ass anarcho-capitalist. And he fucks around with goddamn graphic design. So go to RyanBunting.com. If you want your podcast logo to look similar to mine or Pete Quinones, Ryan Bunting did that at RyanBunting.com. And his book's pretty fucking good too, Project Manicore. You can get it at RyanBunting.com as well. And thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. Enjoy the show. Record. All right, I am here with Mr. James Jenneman, and I'm so happy to have him here. What's going on, Bo?
Hey, Tommy, thanks for having me, man. Just sitting here enjoying my Sunday.
Yeah, it's always nice to enjoy a Sunday. So, you bailed me out because I thought I had enough padding to get through this training for the new job, and I was like, oh shit, I'm 1 episode short. I need help. Somebody, please. And so you stepped up to the plate and you're like, I'll do it, dude. And I was like,
and here I am. I'm far be it from me to turn down any free publicity.
Well, and you've spent time with one of my really good friends, Gord, in Washington, D.C. at one of the unregistered. Oh, he's one of the best people I've ever met. I love Gord to death.
Gord has provided me with a lot of alcohol. Like we spent a weekend together, and that's about it. I think he's probably supplied me with more free whiskey than probably anybody else in the world. I'm usually the one supplying. So if nothing else, I appreciate his flask.
If you ever want some really interesting stories from truck driving, you got to get him on your show.
Man, dude, you're not kidding.
He has got some of the coolest stories. Like going to New Zealand and Australia, ice road trucking in Canada. Like, I mean, he's done it all.
How did he drive a truck to New Zealand?
Well, he didn't drive to New Zealand. He drove a truck in New Zealand. He drove those road trains, man, where they got like 5 trailers.
Man.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. He's got some really cool stories. And he's listening right now. So, hi, Gord.
Hi, Gord.
He listens to every one of my podcasts.
Hopefully. He's one of the most. He's going to be in Lockhart too, right?
I'm sorry?
Is he going to be in Lockhart with us?
He will.
Nice. Great.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. So I sold my soul to Gord to get my tickets. So I don't, nice. I'm still not sure exactly what I have to give him in return. He's like, don't give me money. And I'm like, what do you want? He's like, you will find out. And I was like, oh, this is fucking very ominous.
Man, and he's Canadian too, so
yes, he is.
You never know.
I was like, dude, I will not blow you. but no, Gord is really one of the best people I've met since I started podcasting. And if not for starting podcasting, I wouldn't have met a lot of the people I have met, which I'm very thankful for, you know. And I don't know if
it does go for me. I've got like lots of people's phone numbers in my contacts and stuff who like I wouldn't have otherwise. That is not to say that we encourage more libertarians to start more podcasts, because I think the market's flooded right now. But you know, I mean, if one of us stops recording, maybe you can take our spot.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, start the podcast. If the market will speak, if you're better than us, then we'll have to stop eventually. Yeah.
I don't believe in free markets, Tommy. No, I'm just kidding.
Not anymore. I'm gonna
Yeah,
get
exactly.
I want
That's
the
the it.
government
That's
to
it.
regulate this shit.
As soon as you enter the market and start building, a bit of an audience or a clientele, that's when you raise the drawbridge. You start calling for regulations. We can get Tom Woods and Dave Smith to write the regulations. They'll do it. It'll be
Yeah.
fine.
I don't know. Tom Woods won't even sign a pledge that he's against Nazis. So I don't know if he'll write anything.
Ugh, man, I hate those fucking Nazis.
All right. So we decided we wanted to talk about responsibility, and
Yeah,
it's a subject that I don't think enough libertarians talk about. And at my age, with 5 kids, having been married, responsibility is a big thing to me because responsibility is it's all I've ever been really like taught. It was hammered into my head as a child. Like you got to take responsibility, And one of the ways my dad taught me to take responsibility is he always used to tell me that it was much better if I were busy with something, if I were doing something productive than not doing anything at all, because somebody who's doing something productive is not going to put themselves in a position to get in trouble, right?
mm-hmm.
And I found that to be true because I've gotten in plenty of trouble in my life. So I've learned that I'm a busybody now. Like I'm always doing something. Either I'm out in the yard, I'm
Yeah,
working, I'm doing something, always. And what I've had to try to do is figure out what is the best use of my time. So responsibility without direction is kind of useless, right? It's like if you feel responsible for something that has no consequence to it, then that's like whatever. You're kind of just you know treading water, I guess you would say,
mm-hmm.
spinning your wheels. But responsibility is a very important thing, and taking responsibility for things that are important in your life. And so we decided that this would be a really good topic to move forward on.
Yeah. So my thoughts on it, I guess, just to kind of lay a baseline is, so I agree with some of the great thinkers, like Harry Brown. I think was freedom and responsibility are the same thing. Basically, they're not just like related to one another. They are the same thing.
Mm.
Um, to me, though, I kind of differ with a lot of more like conservative leaning people, I guess, in that I don't really believe in duty. Like for me, responsibility is something that you assume for yourself. It's not something that's thrust upon you.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy for me to say because I don't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like my responsibilities are the things that I choose to be responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, the things that I choose not to be responsible for, if that results in me being neglectful of something that will that will then like harm the community that I'm in or harm the social relationships that I build, then that's also my burden to bear.
Yeah, well, you bring up kids, and I think that's a good pivot point because I told we were talking. I have 5 children, so
Mm-hmm.
it was going through divorces and having ex-wives with your kids and trying to figure out how do you, especially at a young age. I had kids when I was young. I told you earlier I had 3 kids by the time I was 23 years old and got divorced the first time. So it was always trying to figure out like how do you balance this, right? And how do you have the relationship with your children and also provide for them. And I ended up in a line of work, truck driving, that did not allow for time with anything. I was gone all the time. I was always gone. Even if I was working locally, I was home long enough to sleep take a shower, and go back to work. And so it really affected my relationship with my children. And so the responsibility I had to be nurturing those relationships, I neglected because of my responsibility to provide financially. You see what I'm saying? So there has to be a conscious decision whenever you're going into these things. I didn't consciously decide to neglect my children's desire to have a relationship with me. I was so concerned about providing for them financially. And I think it was because I came from a household in which my dad at one point was working 3 full-time jobs.
Mhm.
We were really poor. We were living in government housing, and my mom was working full-time. We were eating, I mean, seriously, we ate peanut butter and jelly and oatmeal for probably 6 years. That's all we ate because it's all we could afford. So coming from that kind of background where my dad was always gone working and my mom was gone working and we were like in daycare all the time, I felt it was more responsible of me to be gone working and providing financially. But then it kind of like kicked me in the ass later on in life whenever my daughter and I started having tension in our relationship because she was like, well, you abandoned us. And it was like, well, my intention was never to abandon you. That wasn't what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
I was trying to provide for you and make sure that you had luxuries that maybe I was unable to have when I was a child, and doing so financially. So there is a balance whenever you're talking responsibility.
Yeah, because you got a lot of overlapping and often conflicting responsibilities. I mean, and especially as a parent, uh, and actually that story is pretty common. Whether it's a poor dad working 3 jobs or a rich dad working 80 hours a week in his business.
Mm.
It's the kids often feel neglected, even if the dad or the mom. I mean,
Right.
I think probably mothers are more often. Well, I don't know. I don't want to speak statistically, but a neglectful mom looks different from a neglectful dad. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Neglectful mom might be the one who, and this is stereotypes, and I hate to use stereotypes, but I mean, stereotypes exist for a reason. A neglectful mom might be the wine mom who is, drinking a bottle of wine a day, or at night when the kids come home from school to take the edge off from her own whatever she was doing during the day, going grocery shopping and all that shit. And the kids feel completely overlooked when mom is drunk all night. Whereas with dad, it's like, dad's gone all day and then on the phone with, business partners or traveling or whatever it is for work.
Right.
I mean, and I don't necessarily want to make this all about parenting, but parenting is, kind of the responsibility that makes our species continue. So it's pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And it's something I've struggled with. Like, since my kids have gotten older, my youngest is 16. He just turned 16, and my oldest he'll be 23, and so it's something I have to struggle with. I look at it, and my youngest is one of those outgoing types, and he's always messaging me because I get so caught up in my daily routine and doing what I'm doing, trying to produce whatever I'm trying to produce, going through what I'm trying to do, and that I don't even think to call my wife sometimes, so it's like, like, let alone anybody else. But he reaches out to me probably once a week, once every couple of weeks. Hey dad, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, hey, what's going on, buddy? And nice. and we'll bullshit, And then that reminds me to get in touch with the other kids. So I'll shoot all them a text. I'll be like, hey, by the way, I didn't forget about you. I'm still here, like, so
I know.
And so I think being a father, I'm not going to say it's uniquely difficult, but being a father that has been pushed away from his children through divorce and these things, it doesn't rob you of the responsibility, but it robs you of a lot of the connection to the responsibility. I don't know if that makes sense, because it's not there every day. It's weird. I don't know how to say it. It doesn't mean I love my kids any less. It's just like it's not right in front of me constantly, so it's not a constant part of my life. And so it makes me look at it in I have to be very cognitive and observant whenever it comes to engaging with my children, because they've been kind of like a separated part of my life. It's almost like a secondary part of my life, which is horrible. I mean, as a father, when you start thinking about it, it really sucks. It really hurts that like this thing that I feel so responsible over, that I feel so much love and affection to, that I want to protect and teach and set out into the world on this mission, has, you know, been kind of torn away from me. And so it's very hard to find a way to balance that.
So what do you do? I mean, have you found a method?
No, I haven't. I've yet to be happy with the way I handle any of this. And, you know, I mean, it's one of those things that I'm constantly struggling with, trying to figure out. Yeah. And so
how has being a
go ahead.
I was gonna say, how has being a trucker impacted that? I mean, it's not like my dad. My dad was a business executive. He traveled a lot for work, but like, you know, he came home most nights.
Yeah.
Is that
it makes it very difficult.
Does that impact your relationships?
It impacts all your relationships. Yes, it does. Absolutely. Yeah. You got to figure you're gone as a truck driver. You're gone about 96% of the time. You're not home. Wow. Yeah. So let's just say, like, just your average schedule of a truck driver would be gone for, let me see, 13 days, home for 2. And that's it. Like that's the way it works out. And then there are some people that are gone. Like I used to leave for 2 months at a time just so I could stack up money and have some cash on, you know, some additional cash. I eventually worked my way into a regional position to where I was gone for 5.5 days, home for 1.5 days, and gone. You know, but see, my wife she moved here from South Africa to be with me, right? Mm-hmm. So she moved all the way 9,000 miles from South Africa to be with me in Texas. And then I was gone all the time. And so it was like, it was kind of, I know it was kind of like a confusing thing to her. You know, it was like, kind of like, wait, you drugged me all the way over here, married me, and then you left. And now you're gone all the fucking time. Now that I've changed jobs, I'm home every night, you know, and I have, you know, 2 days off instead of 1.5 or whatever. And so it makes, you know, we're both very much a lot happier. But when you're an OTR truck driver with a family, your family is not getting any attention. And this is what I was saying a while ago. Like my entire point of doing the OTR thing, of going over the road and driving a truck in this manner, was to make sure that my family was financially set and financially cared for, but I wasn't emotionally caring for them. And so, because I was absent, and so by being absent, you are putting at risk all of your relationships for the vast majority of the time. And balancing that is very difficult. A phone call only does so much.
Yeah. Or even like a Zoom call or whatever it is that people are doing now, you know?
Right.
I feel like too, in addition to, and maybe even before, like interpersonal relationships, you've got responsibilities to yourself. to take care of your, put on your own mask before you put it on your kids. So like, I mean, keeping track of your health and wellness, your emotional stability and spiritual life, which I kind of lump those together. Like I consider emotions and spirit to be kind of the same thing. They're both kind of just the incorporeal, like the unbodied part of you. What do you think about that?
I feel like I'm getting interviewed now. I thought I was interviewing you, but no, I'm just playing there.
Yeah, man, that's what I do.
No,
but I mean,
this
like
dude went and flipped the script on me. No,
I take really shitty care of myself. Like I eat bad. I'm on a keto diet right now and I'm not even losing weight. It's weird.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I've tried keto so many times that gone off of it for a month and then gone back on and stuff, that my body's just like, calling my bluff now. So I'm gonna have to start exercising, which I hate. I don't have a spiritual life, so to speak. Like, I mean, I listen to podcasts all day. If I'm not working, I'm listening to podcasts. I'm never alone with my own thoughts.
Right.
It's it's destructive. That's not constructive, and it's not even neutral. It's like a destructive habit.
Yeah, no, well, I don't talk much about spiritual life, and I guess I should, because there is a part of me that is spiritual, but it's not in the way that a lot of people identify spirituality. And I got into this conversation with Matt Erickson on Twitter about it, and this is part of the reason I consider myself agnostic. Now, I grew up Southern Baptist, but my parents weren't really active in the church, and
that'll turn anybody agnostic.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah.
But no, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things that are going on in the Southern Baptist Church that you're like, what the fuck? Yeah, but
yeah.
So my entire issue was I would read the Bible like very intricately. I would get very detailed in my readings and in my interpretations and trying to figure out what the Bible was saying. And I would go ask people, preachers or whoever that were supposed to be, the authorities on the matter, any of these questions that would come across in my head. They would never offer a sufficient answer. So I kind of just veered off the path, like, of Christianity in general, just because it always seemed like there was this avoidance to talk about difficult issues and to talk about difficult portions of biblical text, which I found to be the most interesting portions of the Bible were the difficult portions. And so I kind of like went off on my own, but I never gave up on the idea that in the Bible, there's a lot of wisdom. All right. And you can take okay, there's a story. It's always stuck with me. There's a story in the Bible when Paul, was it Paul? Peter. Sorry, Peter. When Peter denies Christ 3 times. Okay. And if you look at the text of it, the way it came across for me, the way I read it was his name was originally Simon. Simon, if I remember the translation correctly, it's been a long time since I looked at this, but Simon meant like pebble or stone or something like that. Whereas Paul was the name, or Peter was the name that Jesus gave him. And Peter actually meant like rock or foundation, right? And after he denied Jesus 3 times, and then Jesus came and found him, he had turned back to being a fisherman. Okay. And Jesus called him Simon. So basically he demoted him. He was like, you're no longer a foundation. You're now a pebble again, right?
Yeah.
So but what I took away from that story was that when you hit these hard times, these times of strife, when you're not happy with your own interactions with life, the way that you're reacting to things, when you kind of tuck tail, when you reveal yourself as the coward you actually are, and all of us are cowardice in some way. Like all of us have a cowardice streak in us. And when you reveal yourself as the coward you actually are, you've let yourself down, and you turn back to those vices that had held you prior to becoming the instrument or the tool that you had become, right? So you revert back to your past inhibitions. And so when I look at the Bible, I see stories like that, and I'm like, okay, there's actually something good you can take from that. That if I find myself in a period of disappointment in my own abilities, if I fail at something, right? Don't give up on yourself. Don't go back to just being Joe Blow. Don't go back to being what you were. Try to keep your head up and keep moving forward, because you don't want to be demoted. You see what I'm saying? So I look at stories like that and I'm like, okay, there's something of value in these stories. Whether these stories literally happened or not, I don't look at it like that. So the way I found my spirituality was moving out to the country. I move out. I love nature. Always love nature. One of my favorite things to do in the morning when I first wake up, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning every morning. I go sit outside on my porch and I drink coffee and I have a cigarette in the dark, in nature. I'm on 9 acres out in the middle of nowhere. I'm listening to crickets and coyotes and, just nature like going. And I find that to be spiritual. And so I find that when you root yourself into something like that's meaningful, you find something spiritual within yourself. Mm-hmm. Whether it's God or whatever it is, that's not for me to decide. But there is that peace and being at peace, working in a garden or fishing or being part of nature. That's where I find my peace. That's where I find my sanctuary is being involved in that. And I love it. And so I do feel like I nurture a spiritual side of myself without intentionally nurturing a spiritual side of myself, because I'm doing the things that I enjoy doing, and that is spiritual to me.
Yeah, that's what I wish I had. For me, it's like, I constantly have content being pumped into my head. I don't remember who you were talking to. It might have been Shane Hazel. You were talking about how like you need a chart to determine what's gray market and white market and black market and red market. And for me, like that's the interesting stuff about agorism, for instance, but that translates to the whole rest of my life too. I'm so cerebral. Like I was raised Catholic, but I was raised Catholic in Texas where everybody's Southern Baptist. So like, I went to Southern Baptist Vacation Bible School and everything. So I get it. Like, the systematic theology of Christianity is way more interesting to me than the contemplative prayer of especially Catholicism. And that has followed me into adulthood where I'm not contemplative at all. To me, the idea of sitting out on the porch drinking a cup of coffee is like, it's not like boring. It's just I can't conceive of doing it. I have to have something stimulating my brain. So whether it's reading Konkin rather than actually practicing agorism, which is why I no longer identify as an agorist, because for me agorism is the action. It's not, believing what Konkin wrote.
Right.
And in the same way, Christianity is about the action. It's about being Christian, not just believing the Christian doctrines. and I can, I can defend the Bible, and I can argue against the Bible, and I can argue for and against Catholicism specifically, until the cows come home. But like, that's not spirituality. That's not engaging in that responsibility to myself to grow myself, in a I no longer, I guess, identify as Christian. I'm more on the agnostic side too, but engaging in those spiritual practices that foster emotional growth, is just not something I do. And it's to me, it's my biggest downfall. And from there emanates all of my other, like, lack of responsibilities. Whether it's, like I've hired somebody to put my podcast out, so that I don't have to worry about, anything other than the recording. I work a job and I'm pretty good at it, but like, I could be way better. But I would much rather sit here and listen to podcasts and, fuck around on Twitter and Facebook. And that's why, like, I've been on this kick right now of asking everybody I can come across, what they think, like, they would tell a 24-year-old who is, just entering adulthood. I didn't say a 22-year-old because, a lot of 22-year-olds are still, like, finding out what they're going to do after school. But by 24, you've kind of like entered the workforce, but you're also not quite sure if, like, the job that you're in is going to be your long-term career, that kind of thing. What would you tell a 24-year-old to do in order to ensure that they're successful when they're 40 and 50 and 60 and then ready to retire?
Yeah.
Because I myself don't know. Like, I'm comfortable now financially, but that's only because I have a high paying job. It's not because I've saved since I was in my 20s. You know what I mean? Like, like I couldn't retire right now if I wanted to. I probably couldn't even retire when I'm 65 right now, on the trajectory that I'm on. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'll go back to what I responded to you yesterday. Whenever you put out that tweet, is you have to set yourself goals, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds to me, and now I'm going to psychoanalyze you, and
thanks. I appreciate it.
I'm as qualified as Thad, so I can do it. But it sounds to me, and I may be wrong, but it sounds to me like you're afraid to be alone with your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds to me like you're uncomfortable. But the thing of the matter is, and this is where psilocybin comes into effect.
Okay, dude, have you been listening to my show? Is that what's going on?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I've been consulting with this life coach, Miguel Duque, who you may know. I don't know. Okay, so Miguel is he's a coach. He's a libertarian. He's an agorist, and he's real active in sort of agorist communities, but mostly in the Pacific Northwest. And he's great, and I recommend him to anybody. And he has suggested that I start getting alone with my thoughts. Anthony Samaroff, who is a bigger name in the libertarian sphere, he's a therapist and coach. Yeah. So he has said, like, just go for a walk. Don't bring your headphones. Don't bring your dog. Don't bring your partner. Just go for a walk. And then I started interviewing people, and they're like, dude, you need to do mushrooms, or you need to do what's the South American native ayahuasca. You need to do an ayahuasca ritual, or you need to do shrooms, or like, just find somebody who trips at you and, just do shrooms, just do it. And I've never done any of that stuff. I've never done anything from taking a walk without headphones to a full-blown ayahuasca ceremony. And I feel like psilocybin is probably where it's at. I'm scared because, so one of the people I interviewed was Mike Brancatelli, however you say it. He hosts the Micadelic podcast, and he was like, man, when I did my first big trip, I came home and I immediately quit my job. And I decided that I needed to go off on my own. And to me, that is terrifying. I do not want to quit my job. I do not want to take a look at all of the shit that's in my life that I probably should let go of. And that's what's really standing in my way, is like the pre-work before actually taking that leap. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and this is where I was going. Like, this is where I stand by exactly what I tweeted back at you whenever you asked about what advice would you give a 24-year-old. set yourself small goals that are attainable,
Yeah.
and reward yourself for reaching them. So let's say, and I'm not calling you a drunk, but let's say every day you get home from work, right, and you drink 2 glasses of whiskey. Let's just say, right. So you're not allowed to have those 2 glasses of whiskey until you have 10 minutes of silence alone.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, just, this is what I was saying. Like, whenever I was saying set goals and then give yourself a reward, like, instead of like, I deserve that whiskey for going to work and listen to podcasts all day and doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm going to wait until I do something that is outside of my comfort zone. And then I'm going to allow myself to have those 2 glasses of whiskey. You see what I'm saying? And so give yourself a goal to reach, and then reward yourself for reaching that goal, but don't make the goal unattainable. You have to make it attainable, right? You know, you're not going to sit there for an hour in silence. Like, you know this. It's not going to happen. You're not going to allow it to happen, right? So give yourself 5 minutes the first week, 10 minutes the second week. Build yourself up to the point where you can sit there with yourself for an hour. You see what I'm saying?
I think also, and this gets into personal finance, which you know, I mean, everybody kind of struggles with finances at one point in their life or another. I still currently do. Yeah, I'm currently digging myself out, which is great. Like, this is the first time I've actually felt accomplished financially, which is, it's wonderful. But God, I wish I could remember her name. She's going to be on my podcast in a month, and I can't remember her name. But she's a homeopath. Like, she practices natural medicine. But her first step was to start meditating, and she used the mantra, "My money is my money." And then somebody else on the Twitter also said something similar. I didn't understand what she meant by "my money is my money." Somebody else clarified on the Twitter thing. It was completely disconnected from what she said, but they were like, set aside money for yourself that you're going to save and not touch until it's ready to be touched, and repeat the mantra to yourself that some of my income is just mine. Like, it's not Target's, it's not the movie theaters, it's not Ticketmaster's, it's sure as shit not the government's. It's just mine. And I'm going to put it aside for when I'm ready to use it, but that time is not now. Right. And to me, that is so powerful. I never even thought about it like that. That, like, I make a budget, and when I allocate that budget, some of that money's going to MasterCard to pay off my credit card, and some of it's going to entertainment to, pay for the concert tickets or whatever. A bunch of it's going to food because I like to eat at restaurants, and I buy a lot of groceries, and so a lot of it's going to Target or Cub Foods or whatever. But I do save. Like, I put a certain amount every week into, Bitcoin and Ethereum and a few other cryptos, because that's where I feel like the best place to put money is right now.
Right.
But I don't think of it as mine.
Right.
And I think personalizing that, rather than like saying this money belongs to, the future, whatever that is, like the universe. Right. If I personalize it and say this is mine for when I'm ready to use it, then that makes a huge difference. And it's really interesting to me that those two people both suggested that as like a meditation mantra, not just like a thing to believe, but a thing to completely internalize.
Right.
And I don't know why that rubs me the wrong way. I guess it rubs me the wrong way because I think of money and spirituality as like opposites. Whereas, in real life, I mean, it plays such a huge role in your relationship with your world and with your God, if you have one. And like with your just everything with the universe, I guess, which, that's trite and cliche, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like your relationship with the universe really does include your relationship with like your role as a consumer or saver.
Right. Yeah, I've heard it said a different way. I haven't heard the "my money is my money," but I have a friend of mine, CJ Ortiz, who's a coach self-help coach he was out of Fort Worth. I think he's in North Carolina now, but he runs the Metal Motivation page, and he utilizes like heavy metal like inspiration to motivate people, and he uses that attitude to like as a motivational tool. And one of the things he always used to say was pay yourself first before you pay anybody else. Pay yourself, and so yes, there is something spiritual to that, and here's where I would go with that is the market, in a sense, is a god, that it operates on a level that none of us can completely comprehend in an omnipotent way, right? It's omnipresent, omnipotent. It's always there, right? And so there is this spirituality to the market and the way that the market operates and to the way that we interact with the market and with each other that is beyond our comprehension in a lot of ways. So I don't think it's necessarily trite to think of the market or money in some spiritual manner. Yes, baby. Oh, are you trying to dodge the camera?
I did not think that you had it pointed right at me.
He saw you, but he doesn't care.
It's all right. Tell her hi.
James says hi.
Oh my God, she's so pretty.
He said you're so pretty.
Oh, thank you.
She just woke up from a nap, so you got to bring the tobacco back eventually. But
yeah, dude, you married up. Way to go.
yeah. I had to import her.
Yeah.
She's much more entertaining than I am too.
Well, that's all right. Anyway, so you were talking about the metal guy and pay yourself first.
So much of the focus of my podcast is to point out abuses of power and how bad things have gotten and the direction in which we're heading as a society. And it can be a real black pill. I've partnered up with Richard Grove to offer my listeners an opportunity to sign up to his Autonomy Course. The Autonomy Course is designed for people looking for solutions, people that want to shape their own future, people that are not willing to be at the behest of large corporations or the United States government or the banking system. The Autonomy Course is designed for those of you who wish to have complete control of the reins of your life, who are looking to be successful, to thrive and not just survive, to provide for your family by utilizing your existing skills and learning how to market and sell those skills in order to be your own boss, or learn new skills in order to leverage that into a new career opportunity. So if there's a job out there you've been trying to get or you've been wishing you could get, but you just don't have the skills for it, the Autonomy Course is the place for you to start, to learn how to land that position, to learn how to market yourself better, to gain confidence, and to be surrounded by a community of like-minded people that will encourage you and help you along the way. So use my affiliate links and go check out the Autonomy Course. It could be right for you.
Yeah. So what I was saying was like the way the market works is it is almost like a god, and there is almost like the spirituality to the way it operates. The omnipresent, omnipotent kind of idea is the market. It's always there. It's always existent. It's always operating. It's interactive in between all of us at all times, and it doesn't discriminate in any way, shape, or form. Right?
Well, and the thing is, at least Christians, and I think a lot of faiths believe that their deity, that God, is love. And what's really funny is that Jeffrey Tucker, who I don't remember if we were recording or not, but we talked some shit about Jeffrey Tucker earlier. But he's a fantastic libertarian thinker. He wrote a whole book called "The Market Loves You," Like,
Thank you.
it's not just that the market is like a deity. Like, it is as close to
Excuse me one second.
the
Baby, will you bring me a beer, please? All right, sorry.
it is as close to like the religious image of God as we have on earth.
Mm.
And that's why liberty and freedom are so like attractive to some people and terrifying to other people. You know, I mean, like, it's intimidating to look in the face of God, especially even if that God is something that might be slightly flawed, like a human created market.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, this, I mean, and we announced this podcast. We were like, we're going to talk about responsibility, but this all ties into responsibility, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so there's this responsibility that the market, like, just like God demands responsibility, you know, in your actions and your sins, and you take responsibility. You have to then repent of your sins and this, that, and the other. The market demands responsibility too, because you're responsible for your actions, and you get this. I mean, and the market in some ways is very high time preference, and it's immediate that the way you get smacked for some of the mistakes you make.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so there is this responsibility that you have in interacting in the market and taking care of your family. You have to learn how to do this. This is not something that there is a natural phenomenon of interaction between people, but it is not natural for somebody to understand how to be successful in the marketplace. And you have to learn, and you have to become responsible to yourself and to your customers in order to be successful in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you get smacked down by the market, or if you get smacked down by, you know, your
Get the fuck back up. Don't
Yeah.
be a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what I mean, the root of the word sin is not like disappointing God or like hurting somebody. It's missing
Right.
the mark.
Right.
Like, you're shooting an arrow and you just miss the target.
Right.
So fucking shoot your next arrow, man. Like,
Go for
you know,
it.
get over it.
Yeah.
You're still a good person. You have fucked up once. It doesn't mean you have to keep fucking up. And in fact, if you keep fucking up, you're just going to continue destroying yourself, and not only destroying yourself, but destroying your relationships with other people, which, like, they could benefit from if you would stop fucking up. Like, just stop missing the mark. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
but I mean, if you fuck up, right? And then you're like, all right, I'm gonna make some adjustments, and I'm gonna try again, and you fuck up again. You make some adjustments, and you try again, and you're like, I fuck up again. You're learning. That's learning. That's what
You're
learning
learning,
is.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
gotta fail. You're not gonna. You know what?
Yep.
The one of the greatest fucking scenes of any movie ever was what was it? Rocky V. Whenever he's talking to his son, and he's talking about getting knocked the fuck down. He's like, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how many times you can get knocked down and keep getting the fuck back up. Yeah, and that's one of the best fucking lines of advice, period. End of sentence in life, period. Because life's going to kick you. It's going to knock you the fuck down. You're going to get the shit beat out of you every once in a while by life. You just got to keep getting up, man. You just got to keep getting up, and you got to keep moving forward. You know, and when you have these responsibilities, when you have a wife, when you have a family, when you have, you know, a mortgage, when you have property to take care of, you can't lay around and feel sorry for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take on responsibility to move forward with your life. If you don't voluntarily take on these responsibilities, then you're just a fucking child living in your parents' basement.
Yep.
And there are a lot of those. Or so
Yep.
I,
Even
so
if you're
I
not
hear.
literally living in your parents' basement, you might as well be.
You might as well.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, cool. So what else? We've covered responsibility to your kids. We've covered responsibility to yourself, which I think, like, what we've been talking about for the last, you know, good chunk of this conversation is really just taking care of yourself, like loving yourself. It took me it was really, really tough for me to say I love myself, like just to speak those words. First of all, because making an I statement is tough for guys. Using the word love is tough for people who have low self-esteem. And, talking about myself it never came naturally to me. I would much rather talk about other people so that I didn't have to look at myself.
Right.
And so, like, just you were talking about small goals earlier, being able to utter the phrase "I love myself" is a really tiny goal that's really tough for a lot of people. So, like, try to if you're listening to this podcast and you want some advice from me, the fuck up, say I love myself. Like, learn how to say it. Look into the mirror. Even it sounds cheesy, but like it's real. Like those daily affirmations that people put on their mirrors or whatever. It's there for a reason. Like that advice is given by therapists and life coaches and motivational speakers and whatever for a reason.
Every entrepreneur I have ever listened to give speeches on being successful has always said that.
You back? I hate Zoom. It says you're muted if you can hear me. Why don't we turn off video though, just to save the bandwidth? I can't hear you still, by the way.
There we go. Is that better?
All right, now I can hear you. Yeah, we're good.
It switched my microphones off. I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, dude. Zoom is so messed up when it comes to stuff like that.
I don't know what just happened. It's like I've never had that happen before. Anyway, what was I saying?
So I said you have to tell yourself you love yourself.
I don't remember where I was going from there. I know I was starting to say something, but I can't remember where I was going from there. Yeah, but we do have a responsibility. Your responsibility first and foremost is to yourself, obviously, and then your family. Now, what family that is that you choose to be responsible to, that is completely up to you. It does not have to be blood relation. It could be somebody you chose to marry. It could be your children.
That's a really good point.
It could be your best friends. I mean, but you learn to be independent by taking on these responsibilities, these tasks. You don't learn to be independent by demanding independence. But just saying I have a right to something does not make you an independent person, doesn't make you capable of functioning in the world. That the world will pass you by, right? And it will, like you said, it will knock you the fuck down. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to pick yourself back up, and you're going to have to figure this shit out on your own. So, yeah, like your responsibilities should be chosen wisely. If you have if you have shitty fucking parents who were fucking abusive to you your entire life, I'm not saying you have to feel some responsibility to these people. What you should do, though, is seek out a tribe that you are comfortable within and find your responsibility within that tribe, And where I have always had an issue, and maybe you can help me like kind of iron this out, is your responsibility to society or community. Because I've always had an issue with this. All right, so like my neighbor, I have a responsibility to not go fuck with his shit, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't have a responsibility to do anything for him. If I don't like the guy and I just leave him alone and ignore him, like whatever, I've fulfilled my responsibility of not fucking with his shit.
Yeah.
So the positive responsibilities, whenever it comes outside of the family structure that you've personally chosen to be engaged within, it's like, all right, so like, where does this come in? Like, how do you balance this? How do you figure this shit out?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think that gets back to what I was saying earlier about responsibility. And actually, God, there's a quote, and I can't remember who it's from. For God's sake, it's something like, "My responsibility is not. It's not something that's like given to me. It's something that I choose." And I mean, there's trade-offs. Like if you choose not to fuck with your neighbor's stuff, great. You are doing the absolute bare minimum. But
Right.
like if you want to be friends with your neighbor, then you're gonna have to do a little bit more than just not mess with him. Like you're gonna have to actually go out of your way, offer to water his plants when he's on vacation, or like, I mean, bring his newspaper up to the door, whatever it is that that fosters that relationship. I wouldn't say that it's a responsibility to him. It might even be a responsibility to yourself. I mean, there are very few people who can live as hermits,
Yeah.
and so in order to build a relationship with another human being, which is for most people a human need, then we have to act on, those things which will foster a relationship,
Yeah.
which makes it a responsibility more to yourself than to the other person.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it all boils down to. I mean,
It's almost egoist when
yeah.
you look at it like that.
Who was just talking about Sterner? Was that Jose? Somebody was just talking about Sterner. And I mean, it really gets back to that.
Yeah.
Your primary, and you just said it, your primary responsibility is to yourself. And maybe that's all that really matters.
Well, and it's
No,
like,
that said, if your neighbor is, putting himself in a really dangerous situation, do you have an obligation to rescue him from that danger if he's drowning or, about to step on a rattlesnake nest or whatever?
no, I don't think you have an obligation. And this was one of the things I always struggled with Rand, right?
Mhm.
Was her people are not charitable for the other person. They're charitable because of their own selfish desires.
Yeah.
Right? And if you are going to do something to save somebody's life, in many cases, well, I don't know. I don't know. I've never been in a situation to where I saw somebody in need of a life-saving tactic, right? So I couldn't say how I'd react or what would go through my mind.
Mhm.
But her argument was basically you're doing it for yourself, and people kind of like took this out of context. But what she's saying is that if you're going to give to charities, don't do it for the sake of the people that are requiring the charity, do it for yourself. And so what she's saying is make yourself feel better about being a good person by giving to charities. She's not saying be selfish and don't give to charities.
Yeah.
She's saying boost your own ego by giving to charities.
Yeah.
That's what she's saying.
In giving to charity, you are being selfish, and that's okay.
Right, exactly. But I mean, I can't tell you. I have a hard time believing like that she was completely right, because I have a hard time believing that somebody who's looking at a life and death situation and makes a spur of the moment decision to help or interact actually goes through this like, this is going to make me a good person, and kind of goes through that conscious thought process of like, well, I'm going to do this because I want to be looked at as a good person. So there is an instinct to people to help others. There's something there. And I don't know if it's a responsibility that we feel for each other or if it's just compassion.
I don't really know. I mean, like, I can't pretend to understand human nature. Like I mean, I tend to agree with Rand and more so with Sterner that like and even Mises. I mean, you know, everything that we do is a means to an end,
Right.
and we respond to those incentives. We respond to incentives in order
Right.
to meet those ends. Like,
Yes.
so in some sense, literally everything we do is an act of selfishness, and therefore like fulfilling our responsibilities to ourselves. And so, and maybe saving your neighbor if he's drowning is really just like, even if you don't want to be friends with that dude, or even if it's not your neighbor, maybe it's just a stranger who you come across in, you know, in a lake who's drowned. I mean, up here in Minnesota, we have people die from ice fishing accidents all the time because they fall into the ice.
Yeah.
And like, personally, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do everything I could in order to bring that person up out of the water and then try to resuscitate them, or call paramedics in order to get their life saved. So even in that case, I wouldn't be acting strictly for them, and so maybe I really am just acting in order to alleviate my potential sense of guilt.
Yeah.
Which,
Well,
you know, it sounds terrible to somebody. Like, you know, if this is the very first episode of Year Zero you've ever heard, that probably sounds like an awful thing to say. But like, it's real. Like, that's the reality. We respond to incentives, and the incentive is not feeling awful for the rest of my life that I let somebody die.
Yeah. Well, there was that guy that was Thad's friend that just got shot a few weeks
Yes,
ago.
in Denver. Yeah, the guy that
Yeah.
got murdered by the cop.
Right. And he had rushed into a situation where there was an active shooter.
Mhm.
And you look at it and you think about it, and you're like, this guy was a hero. You know, I know his first name was Johnny. I can't remember what his last name was, so forgive me there. But the guy was a hero. He ran into a situation where there was an active shooter, and he diffused the situation. He put the shooter down. You know, he pulled his own firearm, put the shooter down, and then the cops came in and shot him. And it's almost like I don't know. It's hard not to ascribe some sort of like blame there to the police. It really feels like, especially since last year and coming into this year, that there's this concerted effort to stop individuals from helping each other.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't surprise me if they knew he wasn't the shooter they were after when they shot him. You know, and that there's this it was this effort to prove that individuals with arms cannot save people from other individuals with arms. And I hate to think that way, but it's so hard not to think that way in modern society. At least from my perspective.
Well,
But-
and even if it's not specifically like that cop shot that guy because he didn't think that he was the actual person who was putting other people in danger, that's how the media is going to spin it. I mean, up here in Minneapolis, right after Johnny was shot, we had Winston Smith shot by the U.S. Marshals of all people, who were pursuing him for a charge of felon in possession of a firearm, which, like, you know, I mean, if you're libertarian, you don't think people forfeit their Second Amendment rights no matter what. Like, you know, if you're not in prison, then you've got the right to defend yourself.
Right.
And that made all the news in the world because this guy was a bad guy. He didn't get the protests that George Floyd did, who, you know, arguably George Floyd was also a bad guy. I mean, he had felony convictions and he beat a woman with a gun, and he was, high on whatever that drug is that he
Fentanyl.
took, fentanyl. Thank you. But I mean, he wasn't possessing a gun, and importantly, he wasn't possessing a gun while an anti-gun president was in charge. Like that's what this is like, the narrative is, if you have a gun and you're not supposed to have one, then you're going to die by the hands of the cops. If you have a gun and you're allowed to have one, and you think that you can be some sort of vigilante and go out and save people's lives, no, you're no hero. Like, we're still going to shoot you. And I don't know if Johnny's death would have been spun the same way that it's spun now if it had been a year ago when Trump was president. Just like I don't know if George Floyd's death would be spun the same way it was a year ago if there was a different president. Like if Kamala Harris is president, I have a feeling the George Floyd death, the narrative surrounding it would be completely different. I hate to bring politics up when we're talking about personal responsibility, but this is kind of a big deal too, Like,
Well, I mean, I don't know about that because, I mean, the BLM protests started under Obama. So,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. No, I mean, there is an element of politics that is involved in personal responsibility, because the fact of the matter is I wouldn't even do this podcast if it wasn't for, like, I was apolitical up until 2015. I didn't give a shit about politics. I didn't give a fuck about these people. I didn't pay any attention. I hadn't read a fucking word of fucking political philosophy. I didn't give a shit. I didn't care who they were. I didn't care what they had to say. I didn't care. And part of that is my generation, we're Gen Xers. We were kind of like the last of the latchkey kids. We were just kind of like, yeah, we just do our own shit, and then they started impeding upon not only our rights, but our responsibilities. They started making our responsibilities more difficult to engage in.
Yep.
And that's what got me involved in politics. I told you earlier, I was sitting, and I've said this on the podcast quite a few times. 23 years old, I had gotten out of the military. I'd fallen 8 months behind on child support, unable to find a job. This was during the recession under Clinton, right after Bush had left office, or right after Clinton had left office, when Bush had just taken office. And,
yeah. After the .com bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like 2003. We're in the middle of a recession. There's not a lot of work. I couldn't find a job. I had just gotten out of the military. I couldn't find a job, and it took me months, like 8 months, to find a job. And I remember going, after I'd already found a job. I'd been trained to be a truck driver at this time. I was working for Halliburton, and I had an appointment with the Attorney General and my ex-wife, and the Attorney General looks her in the eye and says, "So do you think we should put him in jail, or do you think he's working sufficiently and paying child support sufficiently?" And I'm like, why the hell does she get to choose? What qualifies her to choose whether or not I go to jail? That makes no sense to me. And so that was one thing. And then just watching this happen over and over again to people I know. I know a guy who spent $70,000 trying to get his children, custody of his children, because their mother had gotten a DUI with them in the car, and he couldn't get custody of them. Period. And it's like, wait, what the hell is going on? I always say the fastest way to radicalize a father is to put them in family court.
Yeah.
But they get in the way of your responsibility just as much as anything else. They may take responsibility off of some of these people's shoulders, like pull yourself up by the bootstraps now is like a racist, term or whatever. Whatever. Like, look at Quincy. You know, my buddy Quincy is driving truck. He's making like $65 to $70,000 a year. He's doing good for himself. The dude, before he started driving a truck, he'd been sitting on a couch smoking fucking pot for fucking years, and just decided one day I got to do something about my life and started driving truck. And now he's he's a fucking professional truck driver, and he's making a life for himself.
Yeah.
And I don't care. It doesn't matter that he's a black dude or a white dude or whatever color he is. Like the dude he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. He said, if it's up to anybody, it's up to me. You know, I heard a guy, you know, we were talking about motivational speakers earlier, and I remember listening. I think the guy's name was Les Brown. And he had said, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And that's always stuck with me. Well, he also said it's not over until I win. But you got that don't quit attitude. I love that shit. Like, don't fucking quit. You know, so, but I always liked that because it was always like, all right, yeah, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. I can't depend on anybody else. I have to take responsibility for myself, for my own actions, for my own life, for my own family, and I have to figure this out. The supply chain has been broken for over a fucking year, right? I'm not going to bitch to the government about the supply chain being broken. What am I going to do? I'm going to go out, I'm going to farm. I'm going to fucking grow my own vegetables. I have a fucking stocked pond in my backyard. I can go catch my own fucking food if I need to. So if I go to the grocery store and there's no groceries at the grocery store, who's on the hook for that? Not the government, not Market Basket, not Kroger, not fucking Sam's Club. It's me. I'm the one who has to put food on the table. So how am I going to get that food on the table? You know, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And that's all there is to it. That's what responsibility is all about. Right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like, what if I get fired from my job? Like, I mean, we've got a podcast. It's not very well monetized. I work for Thad.
None of them are.
Yeah, I know. It's true. But, you know, I mean, I work for Thad. He's paying me. I guess I could put in more consulting hours for him. But like, it's not going to replace my income. So like, I mean, and that's not my employer's problem. Like if they no longer need my services, or if my services are not meeting the expectations that they've set for me, then that's an issue that they're going to deal with by getting rid of me. And I can't do anything about that by complaining to my friends or, you know, begging them to have mercy or whatever. Like that's just the way things are. You promote Autonomy, the course from Richard Grove.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, that's what that's kind of all about is, like literally not literally, obviously there's no way to literally pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but
hold on,
figuratively pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, you know? I mean, that's what autonomy is all about.
Right.
And that's what the word means, you know, it's creating a law for yourself, not from your employer, not from the supply chains and the government and all that other stuff. Like it's becoming your own person and being as self-reliant as you possibly can be in 2021 in the United States of America or wherever you live.
Yeah, well, you have to create your own, like, you know, Per Byland says this perfectly. He says the natural state is poverty. So the question isn't why people are poor, it's how people get rich. Like that's the question. And so you have to think about that. And that's part of responsibility is thinking about what do people do, you know? My wife, she runs her own business now. Like she came to the US. Okay.
Maybe try turning off your video.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Okay, and we're gonna end here in a second.
Yeah, cool. Okay. The last thing I heard was my wife came to the U.S. Just so you know.
Okay, yeah. So So my wife came to the U.S. She tried working for. She was a paralegal in South Africa. She tried working for law firms here in Texas, and she didn't like the environment of the work. And we've heard, I mean, you've heard Thad talk about this. I've heard Thad talk about this, about the work environment in the U.S. and the way it's set up. And I never thought anything of it until I actually talked to my wife about it. And she was telling me how isolated she felt. She was in an office with 15, 20 other people, but she felt completely isolated in that cubicle and completely shut off and expected to just sit there quietly and do her work. Whereas in South Africa, she would be sitting at a table with 4 or 5 other girls, and they'd all be chatting and talking and working all at the same time. It was a completely different experience for her. And she's a big people person, much more so than I am. And so she was and then her boss was a complete dick on top of it. So there was that too. So she decided I can't do this. So we seeked out ways that she could create income from the house and work from home. And so we found the opportunity of her becoming a virtual assistant. And basically, she does administrative work for small businesses all around the country. She just signed a new 1 or 2 new clients here this week. And so she's actually possibly looking at starting to hire, other administrators to take on some of these clients here in the near future, because she's starting to take on more clients than she can handle on her own. But that didn't happen because we were dependent on her employer to make the work environment more suitable for her. It happened because we took responsibility for her happiness and figured out a way to make her more happy. And so things weren't perfect at first. There was a time where she was working for the person she hated to work for and being a virtual assistant. And it took her a while to replace her income. You know what I'm saying? But we took that responsibility upon ourselves and did that ourselves. We didn't wait on somebody else to do that for us. And that's what responsibility is all about. You can't be waiting on somebody else to do it for you. You have to take some initiative and do it yourself. That ambition you have within you to be something is nothing but a dream unless you set a plan in motion to accomplish it. And then it becomes a goal. A dream is nothing without action. Once you enact a plan to reach that dream now is a goal.
Yeah. Amen. I mean, brings us back full circle to the Harry Brown quote, which I've actually pulled up. Freedom and responsibility aren't interconnected things. They are the same thing. If you're not acting upon the responsibilities that you have to yourself, and by extension to the other people in your lives, to the society that you live in, et cetera, and so forth, then you are not free. And this is, and I know we need to wrap up, but
no, take your time, man. Don't worry.
This is sorry if I hit my microphone, if that made a big bump. The unifying factor between these different factions, the agorists who are way the hell over here, where everything is their own autonomous responsibility, to the LP people who are whose responsibility is political, but still they're looking for this freedom through political means, or the Matt Erickson in the middle, where you're kind of hopeless when it comes to politics. Yeah, politics matters, so maybe the agorists are wrong, but you're not going to change anything by doing the LP strategy, so don't bother with that. But make a lot of money so that the politics just kind of stop mattering to you. Regardless of where you land on this big debate that's completely dividing the libertarian movement right now, but shouldn't be. What really matters is that if you want freedom, you have to act on the responsibilities that you have to yourself, and by extension, like I said, to your friends and family and your society that you live in, and so on and so forth. And so I'm really glad that we had this conversation, Tommy. Like this isn't something that I've really thought about much.
Yeah, no, you brought that last bit up, man, and that's something I've been hammering on because I identify as an agorist, right? And I've been saying for months, and I told this to Sal the other day whenever I had Sal on my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a shit what you do one day every 2 years. It's what you do with the rest of your time that actually makes a fucking difference.
Yeah. Yep.
So go vote. I don't give a shit. Go vote. I don't care. Do it. I don't care if you go vote. But taking that responsibility, being a responsible adult, and actually like doing what adults do and being an adult, that's what matters. That's where we're going to find freedom.
Amen.
And that's what Harry Brown wrote about and how I found freedom in an unfree world. He didn't vote himself freedom, you know? So, you know, he took responsibility and he went out and he figured it out. And that's what we got to do. Like, I don't care if you vote. Like, I'm not going to insult you if you vote. I don't personally do it. You know, like I always said, if Texit was actually going to make the referendum for Texas secession was actually going to be on the ballot, I would have actually registered and gone and voted for that. But I don't go vote normally. But I don't care. Go vote. I don't give a shit. I'm not one of those agorists that is going to insult you for voting. You do what you do. Like, I don't give a shit. But don't blame me that circumstances in your life are bad because I didn't go vote. Because me not voting is not what made your life bad.
Dude. Oh man, from your mouth to God's ears. Jesus. That's man. All right, man. Well, I mean, it's not my show, but I think that's probably a good way.
No, we're good, dude. I really appreciate it. Thanks for sticking with the difficulties we had, whatever the hell. Yeah,
totally.
I've never had that happen, so that was really strange.
Our Zoom crashed like 3 times in the
interviews. Yeah, that was really fucking weird.
Hopefully it's cohesive. But
yeah, I hope
audience,
so, man.
But, I think it was a great chat. I think this is great. I've actually experienced some personal growth from talking to you, so that doesn't happen often.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Well, you're stubborn. I get it. You know.
Yeah, it really that's the thing. All right, cool.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Oh, hey, y'all can find me too. Go to.
I'm sorry. Yeah, plug, please. I'm sorry.
No problem. Blackbirdpodcast.com. You can follow my podcasts and writings when they come out. And then James LJ on Twitter.
Awesome, dude. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. All that's in your Twitter bio?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll put it all in the show notes. We'll have all those links there, dude.
Cool.
And we'll see you up on the Libertarian Institute tomorrow.
Nice.
So,
thanks,
all right,
Tommy.
man. I'm going to stop the recording.
Later.
You wanna be a hero, instead you're just a slave. All your good intentions took you to your grave. Your pride is how they killed you. With the flag you wave just like a fool. They promised you a mountain, gifted you a stone. They demanded that you throw it into your neighbor's home, and then seize all that they worked for and give it to the throne just like a tool. Well, as we all just stand in line and glorify new ways of being cruel, it seems to me humanity is not something that they're teaching us in school. They dumb us down all around, propaganda, their pollution. They set a cage up on the stage, a facade for all solution. They build a wall, block them all from this mental institution. It's insane. Now they're writing their own rule books and they're crossing all their T's. They're fashioning their people to all wear beggars' knees. If you want a clean drink of water, well, you must say pretty please. It's all a game. As we all just stand in line and justify these crimes done in our names. It seems to me authority and tyranny are both one and the same. Well, it's time to change the channel. It's time to set things right. Make them all rot with fear in their beds at night. Devour all their worthless souls and sacrificial right, just like we should. Cause this world it needs a cleansing to burn away the shame and destroy all the remnants of those who are to blame. And we'll stack them up like cordwood, watch them sizzle on the flames for good. Well, as we all just stand in line waiting for some kind of Robin Hood, our liberty will never be until our right to freedom is understood. Thank you.